When US and Israeli forces began their attack on Iran, there weren't only Iranian air defenses standing in their way. Tehran also had an exciting ace up its sleeve, a so-called world-class air defense weapon provided courtesy of Beijing, the HQ-9B, a variant of the HQ-9 long-range surface-to-air missile system. Unfortunately for Iran and for China, the system failed to live up to the hype. It was utterly crushed beneath the weight and intensity of American airstrikes, proving to be little more than an expensive and embarrassing flop. As far as China's concerned, this wasn't supposed to happen. The HQ-9 is supposed to be one of the flagship products of the Chinese defense sector. Work began on this system back in the 1970s, with full-scale development commencing soon after, in the late 1980s. Since then, several models have been released, including the original HQ-9, the naval HQ-9 variant, the slightly improved HQ-9A, which entered service in 2001, and the HQ-9B, which boasted extended range and improved technologies. Aside from China, several other nations have invested in and currently operate HQ-9 systems, including Pakistan, Egypt, Azerbaijan, and Iran. And it's easy to see why there's been so much active interest in this system from various countries across the globe. As Chinese officials marketed it as a truly world-beating entry into their air defense sector, they claimed that it could perform up to the same standard as the Russian S-300, which has long featured in lists of the best air defense systems in existence. Officials also boasted about the HQ-9 surpassing the US Patriot system, another of the world's top air defenses in certain aspects. They highlighted its remarkable range, with the HQ-9B variant able to strike targets at distances of around 160 mi or 260 km, as well as the phased array radar system, giving it the ability to track up to 100 targets all at once and engage anywhere from 6 to 8 simultaneously. Other key features of the HQ-9 include its vertical cold launch and 360-degree omnidirectional coverage, and its missiles are said to reach speeds in excess of Mach 4 or more than 3,000 mph, with warheads weighing close to 400 pounds or 180 kilos. In theory, any country using a system like this should find it much easier to defend its airspace and protect its most valuable assets and key infrastructure locations, nullifying the threats of enemy jets, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles too. China clearly believes in the HQ-9 as it uses it to protect several strategic areas within its borders and beyond in places like Beijing, Tibet, and the South China Sea. But it's one thing to boast about technical specifications and claim that your system can rival some of the best in the world. It's something entirely different to actually put it to the test in real-world combat conditions. That's when you find out if the hype was worth it and if a weapon or piece of equipment can truly fulfill its potential, or if it's just a lot of hot air and bluster doomed to fail as the first sign of danger. And Iran was banking big on the HQ-9 being able to stand up and prove its mettle when that time finally came. According to one of the country's officials, Iran received a significant number of these systems in 2025, in the months following the 12-day war, during which Israel and the United States carried out a surprise strike on the country's nuclear facilities, killing numerous military leaders, nuclear scientists, and politicians, as well as Iranian civilians, over the course of less than 2 weeks. Clearly shaken by that intensive assault on its territory, Iran wanted to step up its defenses in anticipation of another Israeli or American attack. It not only bought a number of Chinese HQ-9 systems, negotiating an oil for arms deal with Beijing to do so, but also set about building a multi-led air defense network far and wide across its territory. This network was made up of domestically developed platforms like the Bavar 373 and the Khordad 15, along with imported air defenses like the Russian Pantsir S-1 and S-300. Iran also had numerous mobile defense systems at its disposal, capable of quickly moving from place to place and taking up strategic positions wherever they were needed. Made up of so much powerful technology, this air defense network could and perhaps should have made Iran's airspace almost impenetrable, helping the country's regime guard its most valuable and strategic locations. But the Tehran compound of its supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and its various nuclear facilities, military bases, and airfields. And the HQ-9 should arguably have been one of the stars of the show, tracking dozens of American and Israeli aircraft and missiles and taking them out one by one with speed and efficiency. But that's not what happened. Instead, on February 28, 2026, the US and Israel began their attack. Israeli F-15 fighter jets took to the skies, launching Sparrow missiles and other precision munitions at key locations like Ali Khamenei's compound, killing the supreme leader in the opening hours of the conflict. Israel also successfully eliminated numerous other Iranian officials, including the Chief of Staff of Iran's armed forces, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, the Iranian Minister of Defense, and some of Hamas' closest advisors. Meanwhile, US fighters and bombers also penetrated Iranian airspace, carrying out strikes on literally hundreds of targets in a matter of hours. Locations Populations in more than 20 of Iran's 31 provinces felt the full force of American bombs and missiles, with bases, compounds, infrastructure, and military assets like radars and air defense systems wiped off the map or reduced to smoldering piles of wreckage and rubble. With every minute that passed, more reports came in of explosions and destruction. Iran's assets were being systematically wiped out one by one, and its air defense network, which had been so carefully constructed and was supposed to have been able to keep the country safe against attacks of this kind, was nowhere to be seen. Iran's commanders never saw it coming. They knew that they would inevitably suffer some losses due to the sheer intensity of the American and Israeli airstrikes, but they at least thought that they'd be able to strike back and dish out some damage to their opponents, and they were relying on the HQ-9 to make that happen. It was supposed to be able to detect incoming aerial threats from over 150 miles away. After all, it should have been able to spot Israeli jets and American missiles many minutes before they made impact, firing its own interceptors with speed and precision to counteract them, saving lives and protecting valuable infrastructure in the process. Its phased array radar system should have allowed it to lock on and track dozens of enemy assets at once, providing invaluable intelligence to ground teams and other systems, giving Iran the data needed to plan its next steps and execute key countermeasures. Its high-speed missiles traveling 4 times faster than the speed of sound and equipped with advanced navigation and homing technologies should have had little trouble intercepting the enemy's attacks or blowing American aircraft right out of the skies. Instead, the HQ-9 was rendered almost entirely useless from the very first moments of the fight, and it's all because of one massive weakness with this system: its vulnerability to electronic warfare, EW. According to reports from various news outlets, the U.S. deployed its Boeing EA-18G Growler EW aircraft in a bid to jam Iranian radars and air defenses, thereby creating safe pockets and pathways for the jets and bombers to travel through without fear of being fired on and taken out. Many modern air defenses are designed and developed with EW in mind, fitted with their own clever countermeasures to deal with jamming or signal interference. It seems, however, that the HQ-9 was woefully unprepared for this kind of invisible attack, facing intense electromagnetic interference from the Growlers. The system's communications failed. They were unable to achieve seamless integration with their command centers, effectively becoming both blind and mute, all in the blink of an eye. From there, the system's much-hyped phased array radars failed to function as they should. They were supposed to be able to track 100 targets at once, but struggled to even lock onto one. Interference signals fill their screens with false targets, while real ones in the form of F-35 fighter jets and Tomahawk missiles slip by undetected. Blinded, paralyzed, and incapable of accurately identifying any enemy targets, let alone firing on them, the HQ-9s became little more than extremely expensive, but utterly ineffective lumps of metal, easy targets for American and Israeli forces to pick off at their leisure. And it wasn't the first time that these systems failed to live up to expectations. But before we go deeper into that, there's more where this came from, so if you're getting value from the military show, don't forget to subscribe. Now, the HQ-9's catastrophic collapse in Iran is actually its second high-profile failure so far. Back in May 2025, Pakistan deployed some of these systems in order to defend its bases and important infrastructure in key locations like Karachi and the against India's Operation Sindoor attacks. Pakistani commanders hoped that the highly rated Chinese HQ-9 would prove tough enough to deal with India's missile attacks. They were wrong. Just like how Israel and the U.S. were able to successfully bombard Iran, despite its layered air defense network, the Indian military managed to strike numerous targets across various Pakistani regions, breaking its enemies' defenses with relative ease. India made smart use of Israeli EW technologies to jam Pakistan's radars and communications, rendering at least some of its air defenses, including the HQ-9, worthless. It followed up with a mixture of kamikaze drone attacks and BrahMos supersonic cruise missile strikes, causing widespread devastation. If China's claims about the HQ-9 were true, then none of this should have happened. The HQ-9 should have had little trouble spotting incoming threats from far away, launching its high-speed missiles to eliminate them. Instead, its screens were filled with static, its radars went blind, and its missiles failed to launch without any clear targets to actually aim at. After that incident, those wishing to defend the Chinese systems could have argued that it was a result of operator error, or the fact that the HQ-9 had been deployed in an unfamiliar setting, very different from where it was originally intended to be used in China. Now, however, the HQ-9 has failed not once, but twice in 2 very different locations against 2 very different enemy forces. That can't be simply excused or written off as an unfortunate incident. It's clear to see that these air defenses, despite all the bluster and boastful comments that have made them sound so impressive, are simply not fit for purpose. And part of this comes down to experience. The best air defense systems in the world are those that have proven themselves in real combat conditions again and again. Israel's Iron Dome, for example, has withstood numerous attacks from various enemy forces over the years, protecting millions of people in cities like Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and preventing incalculable amounts of damage and destruction. The U.S. Patriot System 2 has proven to be remarkably effective, having undergone a veritable trial by fire in the Persian Gulf War of the early 1990s, going on to see extended use during the U.S. invasion of Iraq in the 2000s and various other conflicts. It's even been used in the Russia-Ukraine war, helping Ukraine defend its town, cities, and military sites against Russian missile attacks. Because these systems have been used so extensively and have so much experience, there's also vast amounts of relevant combat data that operators can use to inform their future strategies and extract even more value from these air defenses. This in turn has allowed systems like the Patriot and the Iron Dome to essentially evolve over the ages, getting stronger, smarter, and more efficient. The HQ-9, in stark contrast, entered the air defense arena with no notable experience outside of carefully controlled testing sites like those in China's Taklamakan Desert. There, it may have proven itself capable of taking out slow-moving drones flying along pre-programmed trajectories, but that's simply not the same as having to contend with a real conflict where the enemy can deploy a whole host of different weapons against you with missiles and drones that come from all directions and with state-of-the-art EW systems doing everything in their power to nullify your offensive capabilities. Exposed to the real heat and intensity of the battlefields of Pakistan and Iran, the HQ-9 was found wanting. That should be a massive source of concern for all the countries that have invested in Chinese military hardware in recent years. And there are a lot of them indeed. Recent data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, which is one of the top research bodies when it comes to conflict and military spending data, shows that China is responsible for around 6% of the world's arms exports. Maps show that dozens of countries across several continents have bought up various amounts of Chinese weapons and defense systems in recent times. That includes almost all of Africa, as well as large parts of Asia and several countries across Europe and the Americas too. Some countries rely almost exclusively on China for their defense. Pakistan, for example, is Beijing's best customer, accounting for 63% of Chinese arms exports from 2020 to 2024. Other countries from Myanmar and Bangladesh in Asia to Nigeria and Algeria and Africa have also bought up large amounts of Chinese drones, tanks, aircraft, armored vehicles, missiles, and small arms. For many of these countries, which don't have the same big military budgets as Western nations like the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, buying from China makes a lot of sense. Chinese systems are typically much more affordable than American, European, or Russian equivalent, and China does a good job of hyping up its innovations with lofty claims and impressive tech specs. But as they watch on and witness as China's HQ-9 systems failed to perform as expected, first in Pakistan, then in Iran, those countries that have opted for cheaper Chinese equipment over proven Western alternatives may now start to regret their choices. Many are likely to be realizing as we speak just how flawed, faulty, and inefficient these pieces of equipment truly are. That in turn could see some of these nations starting to shift away from importing any additional Chinese weapon systems in the not-so-distant future, looking to other countries like Russia or the nations of the European Union to bolster their defenses instead. That's bad news for China, and it's not the only reason why this whole story should have Beijing worried. The Asian giant has in recent years made a big show of investing heavily in its military and producing more weapons and defensive systems domestically, relying far less on imports from other countries. It has on numerous occasions shown off its latest missiles and other military innovations at grand parades and defense events, flaunting its technologies in an attempt to intimidate any countries that could dare to oppose it in the future, like the United States, for example. But there's not much point in showing off weapon systems if they turn out to be utterly useless in real combat conditions like the HQ-9. Indeed, high-profile failures like this are not bolstering China's reputation as a world leader in defense, but fracturing it. All of a sudden, the Chinese military doesn't seem as scary or imposing as it has so desperately tried to appear. Instead, its flaws are being laid bare for all to see. Flaws like haphazard assembly, low-quality electronic components, plagiarized designs, and patchwork blueprints that may look good on paper, but fail to deliver real results where it matters on the battlefield. Modern warfare demands high-end technology, seamless system integration, and software that's just as advanced as the hardware, allowing weapon systems to not merely pack a punch and fire enormous explosive warheads, but also to withstand the high electronic warfare tactics in use around the world. Unfortunately for Beijing, it appears that the weapon systems it's been working on just aren't cut out for this kind of combat. Similar in many ways to Russia, it appears to be being left behind adhering to outdated philosophies and driven by a desperate desire to constantly create weapons that are bigger, stronger, and faster than those that have come before, but refusing to put in the necessary technical work to make those kinds of weapons actually viable in the conflicts of today. Because the truth is that it doesn't matter how fast a missile can fly if it's not able to reliably evade enemy defenses, nor does it matter how much range an air defense system has, or how many targets it can track simultaneously if it doesn't have world-class EW defenses and other crucial technologies to protect it when the likes of Growlers come into range. This is why the HQ-9's failures matter so much. It's not just that they allowed American and Israeli missiles to strike Iranian targets, decapitating the country's regime and eliminating a large part of its defenses. It's also about what this means for China moving forward. The country's credibility as an arms exporter has taken a huge hit. For years to come, buyers will look back at this incident and second-guess any potential investment into Chinese hardware. Allies will be less likely to believe Beijing's propaganda machine and buy into outlandish claims about the latest missile systems and defenses. Within China, too, while they may not admit it openly, the country's commanders will slowly but surely realize that the systems simply aren't anywhere near as powerful as claimed. That, in turn, will make any future military operations of the People's Liberation Army, like a prospective takeover of Taiwan, much more perilous and riskier. The myth of Chinese military dominance has been shattered, and there's no going back from here. To make matters worse for China, the Iran war has underlined just how powerful and advanced the American military is, which you can learn all about in this video, which looks at how the United States Space Force has deployed futuristic satellite technology to take warfare to a whole new level. Alternatively, check out this video to learn more about other advanced, previously unseen American weapons that have been deployed to great effect in Iran so far. And finally, remember to subscribe to our channel to keep up with the latest breaking news from this conflict and others around the world.